So we heard from 4 former premiers, Christy Clark, Kathy Dunderdale, Alison Redford, and Kathleen Wynne. I was speaking with them about the SNC-Lavalin controversy, but I also wanted to get their thoughts on female representation in Canadian politics. Canada ranks 59th in the world based on the share of women in elected legislatures. So why aren't more Canadian women getting into politics? Here's part 3 of our conversation. It's International Women's Day, and you were all leading your respective provinces at a time when a record 6 of the provinces and territories were led by women. I want you to take a look at these 2 pictures. The first is a photo that I think many of you will recognize from 2013, number of women sitting around that table. And then the second photo, which is about to come up, is from 2018. Which looks a little different. So I wanted to get you all to weigh in on that. And Ms. Redford, I'll start with you. Is there something that we should read into that? Do you think that should matter?
Yeah, there's less women sitting around the Premier's table. Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, when we think about women in politics and we think about the roles that we play, we've even seen today in the panel discussion, we're all different in terms of our perspectives, our styles, the provinces that we represent. But I think that we can generally agree that when there are women sitting around the table at a higher percentage in terms of the decision makers, that the conversation is different, will be different, because women have a different perspective than men. And so I think that when we think about the discussions that are going on about Canada, that it's important to have diversity in those discussions, and there's less diversity when there's only one woman sitting at the table.
Ms. Clark, what do you think about there being just one woman around that table right now?
Well, I think that, I don't think that men and women care about different political issues, because I think women care about taxes and men care about healthcare. But I really have experienced, because almost at my half my cabinet was women most of the time, and we just bring a different experience of those things. So, for example, when my mother was dying of a brain tumor, my brothers were really helpful, and they wanted to move furniture and they wanted to give money and those kinds of things. But I was the one that was crawling into bed with her when she was freaking out from the drugs that she was taking. I was the one that was making sure she got fed every day when she didn't want to eat. I was the one that was, I mean, all those kind of helper things. It doesn't mean that my brothers didn't care and they didn't care about health care. It's just that my experience of it was as a participant, as a helper, which is, you know, vastly more often the case for women than for men. And so when we talk about health care at a federal or provincial cabinet, we bring that experience and it makes a very real outcome.
Well, and it means, Christy, because of the different life experience, there are different solutions put forward, right?
Yes.
You can think of different ideas that might help the people who are going through those. So I think that what we can say about those pictures is that it's a shame. It's a shame that we don't have more women at that table. I remember, and I know everybody was at the meeting, and we remember that picture that was taken of us standing, the 6 set of legs, you know. It was a very different image. And there were reporters asking us at the time, does this mean that we've made the breakthrough, you know, in this country? It's going to continue. Women have made it. We're here. And I think all of us agreed that you couldn't read that into the picture. Even at the time, we said, no, and Alison and Christy, you know, everybody agreed that this could be a very fleeting moment, and indeed it was.
Ms. Dunderdale, I'm sure it's a number of, there are a number of factors, a number of reasons, but when you're looking to ascribe some sort of, you know, explanation to why there's only one at the table right now, what do you think?
Because I think people revert very easily back to old ways of thinking and doing. And so having somebody at the table, first of all, your table should reflect the people that you govern or that you serve. That's the first principle. The second principle is life impacts on us differently. And sometimes old ways of acting and thinking can have a very negative effect. So when you address that, when you recognize it, and I can give you an example, when the oil industry began here and Hibernia was the economic engine driving Newfoundland and Labrador, only 4% of the people who were employed on the project were women, less than 1% in trades. Out of that knowledge and experience, a group of women were able to effectively put in place a training program for women that could start to change that fact. All of that morphed up into our very last agreement when, for the first time in this country, probably for the first time in the world, there was a gender and diversity peace negotiated in the Hebron Agreement. You know, that's a really good example of why it's important to have people who have that lens at the table, because you have to do something. You know, it doesn't happen because of malevolence or bad, you know, people have bad feelings or thoughts about women, but it doesn't change unless somebody puts a real effort to it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, having women at the table makes sure that that happens, that those old ways of thinking and acting are challenged. And when things get better for women, they get better for everybody.
Ms. Redford, you have to think about young girls who are looking at the political scene right now and maybe entertaining options as to what they want to do with their life, and they don't see many people now in those roles. We had a lot of viewers who are interested in this and a lot of people on social media, and I wanted to ask you each the same question from someone on Instagram, Redwood Wolf, who said, hindsight is 20/20, but would you do it again? And I think it's an important question for younger girls who are watching right now. So would you do it again?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but yes, I would. I'm not going to. Nobody should get excited. But it was an incredible experience. It was a privilege to be elected. It was exciting to be able to be part of change. I ran because I wanted to make change, and I think we made a lot of change in Alberta on issues like climate, energy, LGBTQ rights, social welfare. Lots of really important stuff that we hadn't talked about yet in Alberta. And we were able to build coalitions of people that did an awful lot of stuff that was really exciting. And I was very proud to be part of that. I would certainly encourage young women who wanted to make change to think about doing it from an elected position. And I think that's a very important thing. It's very different to be a policy advisor, which is what I did when I was younger, and learned how to do it. But when you're actually the elected person sitting around that table, that's a voice that is very powerful. And if young women feel passionate about issues, explore those and know that your voice at 21 is as legitimate as my voice at 45. If you care enough and you have experience and you want to make change, it's exciting, it's a privilege, and I am very, very glad that I had the opportunity.
Ms. Wynne?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. I would do it again. And there, you know,
You're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. I'm not the leader. But we can all point to changes that we made in our provinces or, for example, retirement security. You know, Christy and I sat at the table and we worked, and there is going to be a better safety net for seniors in this country because we pushed an enhancement to retirement security. So absolutely, I would do it. What I would say is that one of the reasons I'm talking to you today is that I believe that we have to talk about our experience. Young women have to hear that we got through it, that we would do it again, why we would do it again.
But they also,
they also have to hear that it wasn't easy. They also have to hear the parts of it that were really challenging, but that we were able to deal with them. You have to be tough, but you don't have to be impervious, you know? You have to take in people's pain, but that doesn't kill you. It can be a motivator. And so all of that has to be part of the discussion. And so I absolutely would do it again. And I am going to continue to the greatest degree possible to talk to young women, to answer their questions, to say to them what I know about the experience and why it's important for them to step up.
Ms. Clark, what about you?
Well, I'm not running again, but if I had to go back and make this decision again, knowing what I know, absolutely. As everybody's, I mean, it was the most fulfilling thing I have ever done in my life. And I feel like I did a good job. And I feel, you know, I made a big difference for people in the 6.5 years that I was there. You can't get that kind of experience anywhere else than in elected public life. And so I have young women all the time when I speak around the country about women in leadership. They say, you know, okay, so I was thinking about getting into politics. Why should I? I always say, because if you don't, then who will? Yeah. Don't sit around the sidelines and say, oh, gee, we've got a problem with not enough women in politics, when you're not willing to step up. And I think, you know, the other thing I say to them is, you know, when you grew up, your dad probably said to you, princess, you can do anything you want. But what he should have added was, you can do anything you want, but because you're a woman, it's going to be way harder, and you should do it anyway.
Hear, hear.
Exactly.
That's right.
Ms. Dunderdale, last word to you.
Well, I think it's extremely important for women to consider running for public office. I think we should be encouraging young women, young children even to consider. When young people came to visit me at Confederation Building and I would bring them into my office, I would encourage every one of them to sit in the Premier's chair. I wanted to plant the seed. If you're sitting here now, come back again when you're older and sit here again. It's the hardest work you'll ever do. It's tough, it's hard, it's tough on your families, but it is extremely worthwhile. Many of us spend a lot of time in our lives trying to get a seat at the table, trying to be heard. When you're in government, that opportunity is very real and you can make a big difference. So I encourage everybody, but especially young women, yes, take it on. You can do it.
Well, that's as good a point as any to end on. Thank you very much to all four of you. I really appreciate your time today. Real pleasure for us. Thanks to the Premier's League, Christy Clark, Kathy Dunderdale, Kathleen Wynne, and Alison Redford.
Thank you, Vashi.